Hi, it's Pam Lippitt joining you. This week is episode 41 of Communication is an Art. The weather has finally broken. It's hot. I love hot, and it's at the moment sunny, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be like really big showers later and thunderstorms. It's an interesting combination of the world. I wanted to talk to you today. I'm going to kind of jump in a bit. The title of today's episode is What's in a Name? And I've been thinking about that a bit lately. My name is not very, very common, but it's kind of common in my community because come from a big family. So there are a lot of Lippitts around. And I was on a class, I did a class a couple weeks ago, and one of the things they suggested is that we Google ourselves incognito so the information isn't already stored in the system, but see what Google says about us and see what Wikipedia says about us. So I thought that was interesting, and it led me, I'm going to tell you that in a minute, what it said about me, and I hope you figure out what it says about you. But I'm going to back up from that, because why is that a communication session on my podcast today? In today's world, when we meet someone isn't really when we meet someone, right? If we know we're going to an interview or going to a program or hearing from someone, we end up Googling them or looking them up on LinkedIn or figuring out where they've been and what they're known for. So that really comes before you ever putting out your hand to shake someone's hand and saying, hello, my name is. So it's really important that your reputation precedes you. It's why college kids or politicians end up scrubbing their social media. I digress. But because they are putting things out in the Googleverse and the universe that maybe they don't want to reflect themselves as they grow up, or hopefully it's not that they want to hide themselves, but that they just have grown up and want to express themselves differently. So with that, I decided to look up my name and look up myself on Google. So it's interesting because, I go by Pam, but my real name is Pamela. And Google gave me Pam in parentheses. So it knew to find that. A lot of it comes from the stuff I did. But what was interesting is it pulled some things together and worded them differently than I ever have. But I really like the wording. It's kind of like a little bit like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, because it puts together all the things from all the places. So here's what Google Incognito has to say about me. Pam Lippitt is an American executive coach, public speaker, entrepreneur, and nonprofit leader based in Michigan. She is primarily known for her expertise in public speaking, leadership development, and strategic corporate communications. It's a mouthful. I like that. I like the values it gave me. I like the information it gave. I will say I have never listed myself anywhere as an American executive coach. And I thought that was really interesting that it added that in. And I normally don't say I'm based in Michigan because I, will work anywhere. Zoom is a wonderful thing. So I thought that was interesting, and it picked it up pretty well. Then I went on to the second part of the assignment, and I went to Wikipedia. Now, there isn't a Wikipedia page about me, and I'm fine with that. By the way, there is another Pamela Lippitt out there, and so that's kind of weird because my name is pretty unique. How did I find out? Oh, I hear you asking, how did you find that out, Pam Lippitt, that there's another Pam Lippitt? I found it because I've owned a direct mailing company for decades. It's kind of on the side at this point, but it's still my jam. And at one point, I had a client, a customer who called me and said, someone showed up in the store today and said their name was Pam Lippitt, but I told them, I know Pam Lippitt, you're not Pam Lippitt. And it turns out her name also was Pam Lippitt. And eventually we talked because I needed to know more about this person in Michigan that I had no idea existed. It turns out Lippitt was her married name. It's just my name. And she knew the same backstory about where the name came from in her husband's family as I did. So I thought that was really interesting. So somewhere along the way, we are related. What's the backstory? Originally, when my great-grandfather came here, his last name was, I think, Lipschitz. I think that's what we've decided. And wherever he arrived, because it was pre-Ellis Island, or at some point, he changed his name. He actually was in Newport, Rhode Island originally, and found a street named with the beginning that was the same. It was Lippitt. And so he took it on. I'll tell you another funny thing about that. When I was in college, I didn't know any of this because when I was in college, there was a card catalog. That's how you learned about other things. In my communication classes and my psychology classes, a few professors asked me if I was related to the Lippitt who wrote this fabulous book that all the classes used and all the information. And so, being my smart little self at that point, I picked up my shoulders and picked up my head and I said, well, my understanding is all the Lippitts are related, so somewhere we must be. Now, I knew we weren't related, but I thought that was a good way to explain myself to a professor at the university, and it worked. So, there you go. So back to Wikipedia. So Wikipedia does not talk about anyone in my family, my actual family. It talks about Lippitt being a surname and may refer to, this is so, if I could count this in my lineage, that would be interesting. Charles Lippitt, who was governor of Rhode Island, Christopher Lippitt, who was in the American Revolutionary War. It goes on Margaret Lippitt, who was an oil painter and art teacher. But Governor Lippitt, that's kind of interesting. Can I say I'm related to a governor? I really don't think so. But there was also a Francis James Lippitt, so it must have been a man, who was an American lawyer and veteran of the Mexican-American War, the Bald Hills War, and something else. And that was like between 1812 and 1902. So it's really funny when you dive in and see this history of who you're not related to, as much as when you work on a family tree and talk about who you are related to. Back to the beginning. People know about you. Your first impression is no longer your first impression. Your first impression is probably now your third or fourth impression. If you're in the workplace, your first impression is probably LinkedIn. If you're selling goods or on Etsy or all those things, that's the first impression. So look what your first impression is. Look how you communicate in those impressions. Make sure that you put yourself forward in the best light possible so people want to meet you. That's another topic, like why people want to meet you as opposed to why you want to meet people. So that's my little tidbit for today. As to summarize, I would say your first impression is no longer shaking someone's hand and introducing yourself. It starts way before that. So you should be starting way before that too, showing how you want to connect, you want to communicate to make successful relationships and business connections that are not one-offs, but are business relationships that can last your whole life long. So that's my message for today. I hope everyone's having a good sunny day wherever you are and wherever you're listening. Have a good day, everybody. I wanted to share with you a new offering from my company, Pamela Lippitt Communications. I'm actually offering a communications audit. So who is this for? It's for a company, a nonprofit, where there's new leadership, new board members, or new senior hires who may not be up to speed and are seeing different things when they're looking at different pieces of paper, because really it's the new people who are really diving in and looking at things. It could be because you have new programs or new clients or new services, and you want to give them a consistent message about your company. It may be that people are asking the same questions all the time. That means you should be answering it in your materials so they don't have to ask. And it's also if you're seeing internal frustrations among your team. Maybe they don't have the right materials they need. So if you're interested in a communications audit for your company, I am giving a bonus for anyone who mentions hearing this on the podcast. Not only will I do a communication audit of your materials, but I'll also come in person or via Zoom and meet with your team to go over all the materials as we start and as we finish to make sure everyone's on the same page. So with that, shoot me a text or an email if you're interested, and I am happy to reach out and discuss how your communications can be smoother, more concise, and lead to more business. Thank you.